Let's talk about one of the biggest questions in life, right? How do we actually choose the people we fall in love with? I mean, this is a massive, high-stakes decision, maybe the biggest one we'll ever make. And yet, most of us just kind of wing it. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and really look at the hidden forces that are guiding our hearts.
For the last couple of centuries, we've all been living under this really powerful idea called romanticism. And its number one rule, the thing it tells us over and over, is pretty simple. Trust your feelings. You know, that spark, that gut instinct, that insane chemistry, we're told that is the only compass you need to find true love.
And this is the dream it sells us. It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? This idea that love is this incredible shared ecstasy when you finally stumble upon that one in a million person who just seems built to make you happy. It's basically the plot of every movie, every song, every book we grew up with.
It's a really nice, warm idea, but you gotta stop and ask a tough question. After a few hundred years of everyone trying to follow their feelings, has it actually worked? Has it led to happier, more lasting relationships?
And this is where things get interesting, because when you actually look at the track record, the whole trust your gut philosophy starts to look, well, a little shaky. In fact, you start to wonder if sometimes it's not an instinct for happiness at all, but an instinct for disaster.
To really get romanticism, you have to know what came before it. For centuries, marriage was basically a business deal. The method was pure calculation, a family strategy. The goal wasn't your personal happiness, it was about things like preserving land or power. So romanticism was a revolution. It flipped the whole thing on its head. It said, forget calculation, the method is instinct. And forget land, the goal is your personal happiness.
But here's the absolute kicker. When you look at the results, this huge experiment of trusting our gut, it hasn't really made us any happier in our relationships than those old, calculated arrangements did. Instinct has turned out to be no better than calculation at creating lasting love. It's a pretty wild thought, right? So if our instincts aren't a reliable guide, what in the world is actually steering the ship?
So what's really going on? Well, there's this fascinating and honestly kind of troubling explanation that comes from psychotherapy. And it gives us a whole new way to think about attraction. It's called the familiarity trap. Okay, so here's the core of it. The theory says we don't actually fall in love with people who are good for us in some ideal, healthy way. No, we fall in love with people who care for us in ways that feel familiar. And as we're about to see, familiar doesn't always mean good, not even close. So how does this work? Basically, our entire adult love life is built on a kind of love template that got created way, way back in our childhood. The very first experiences we had with love and affection, from our parents, our caregivers, they created a blueprint. And now, as adults, we unconsciously use that old map to find our way in every new relationship. The problem, of course, is that for a lot of us, that first taste of love was, well, complicated. Maybe for you, love felt like trying to help a parent who was out of control. Or maybe it felt like being deprived of warmth, or being a little bit scared of someone's anger, or never feeling safe enough to say what you really needed. These confusing, often painful dynamics get baked into our love template. So as adults, we think we're looking for happiness, but what we're really looking for are these old, familiar feelings.
And you know what? This explains something so weird that I think we've all seen. You meet someone who is just perfect on paper. They're kind, they're reliable, they're mature, they're totally balanced, and you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel kind of bored or even annoyed by them. Well, this theory says it's because they're too right. Their healthy, straightforward love feels completely foreign. It doesn't match the drama and complexity of our template, so we reject it.
So if our instincts are this tangled up, are we just doomed to repeat the same mistakes forever? Absolutely not. And this is the most important part. This is how we can start to untangle this mess and begin choosing a partner with our eyes wide open. The way forward isn't to just ignore our feelings. That's impossible. The key is to understand them. It's about becoming a kind of detective of your own heart, learning to spot how those old compulsions from childhood might be secretly pulling the strings on who you feel that spark with today.
So how do you actually do that? Well, you can try this exercise. First, just identify your attractions. Who really excites you? And, just as important, who bores you or puts you off? Be super honest with yourself. Then, try to trace those qualities back to your past. Does that person who's a little distant or a bit chaotic, do they remind you of anyone who first taught you about love? The third step is to question that impulse. Ask yourself, is this feeling of attraction really a good guide to my happiness? And finally, just acknowledge the pattern. See your type for what it is, not a guide to your soulmate, but a legacy of your own history.
There's this quote in the source material that's just so perfect. It says, "It's useful to know that we're carrying a ball and chain." And that's such a great metaphor, right? Our emotional history, this love template, it's like a weight we're dragging around. We can't just snap our fingers and make it disappear, but just knowing it's there, feeling its weight, and understanding how it trips us up, that's the first huge step toward freedom.
And that's the real practical payoff here. Once you're aware of your patterns, you can be more careful. That overwhelming, "I've known you my whole life" feeling you get after one date, you can now pause and ask, wait, is this real, or is this just the powerful pull of the familiar? And it works the other way too. When you instantly write someone off as boring, you can ask, are they actually boring, or do they just not fit into my old, maybe unhealthy template?
So in the end, the goal isn't to find some perfect person who checks all the boxes. The goal is to become liberated. Liberated from the script that your past wrote for you. It's about getting the freedom to finally see the potential for love in people who are different from your usual type. To realize that the person who can make you truly happy might not feel familiar at all at first.
So I want to leave you with this question to think about. When you think about that feeling of being in love, that spark, that chemistry, what does it actually feel like in your body? And more importantly, after everything we've talked about, can you start to figure out why it feels that way to you? Because figuring that out might just change how you choose love forever.